reactive, unreactive, or responsive? That is going to be the topic of this episode of Chi Life. So I don't recall exactly how this topic came to mind recently. I would have been doing something or talking to someone about something around this, but yeah, I thought it could be something interesting to talk about in the vlog, something that might be helpful for some perspective for some people. A lot of us are aware of some of the dangers or issues that can come from being too reactive, from living in a reactive way. I'll talk a little bit about that first and some of the potential problems with that, and then we'll get into, well, okay, so what are some of the alternatives? Because there's a little bit of nuance there in terms of, if we don't want to be too reactive, what do we do instead? So to begin with, in terms of how we find our way through life, hopefully we're steering our way through life. Hopefully we actually have an intention, a direction of where we want to go, what we want to achieve. This can be across many different areas. It can be literally physical destinations we want to go to, or knowledge we want to gain, skills we want to develop, personal characteristics and attributes, relationships, things where we have an idea of where we want to go, and that we actually take active action towards this. Maybe not everyone's doing this. Sometimes it can be an appealing notion to just go with the flow and let the currents of life take you wherever they go. And to some extent, we do need to work with the currents of life. But there is an old saying, I believe it's attributed to Eleanor Roosevelt, whether she actually said it or not, I don't know. But an old saying that only dead fish go with the flow all the time. And that's even a fish who their natural home is in the water and working with the currents. If they're alive, they steer at least some of the time. They don't always just go with the current, because if you just go with the current goes where it's going to go, and that's not necessarily, or eventually at some point, it's definitely not going to be good for you at some point. If it's a current like in a river, eventually that current's going to run you right into a rock or off a waterfall or something like that. It might be great a lot of the time, but other times it's not going to be so good. And so fish, yeah, they'll ride the currents and so on, but then when they need to, if they're alive, at least some of the time they're going to swim across the current or even up against the current, because there's somewhere that they need to go for their good, right? You can't just go with the flow all the time. Some of the time you need to be steering and putting in active effort. It's the same for us in our lives. Yeah, there's times when just going with the current is beautiful and good for us, and and maybe for some of us it might be a lot of the time. For others of us it might not be as much of the time. But there's always going to be times when we actually then need to steer, to work with the current, and sometimes to even go against the current. So ideally we're steering ourselves through life. There's somewhere we want to go, something we want to develop, and so on. Then when different things happen around us or to us, it can be things in our environment, it can be interactions with different people. You can think of this like, in a simple way, like a physical force coming in from a different angle. Of course, it can be anything. It could be something someone said, something in the economy, something with the weather, who knows what it is. We can think, okay, we're wanting to go in this direction, and something comes in, from another angle, or, whatever angle it is. And, well, what do we do about that? There can be a tendency to react to it. It's like, I'm wanting to go there, but now I have to deal with this. Now, when we're too reactive, the problem with this is that can then take us off course. It can take our focus completely off where it is we're wanting to go. So we might, instead of still being aware of where we want to go, okay, I need to turn around and push directly against this, put all my attention into it to deal with this thing coming in, react against it. Or alternatively, it might be, okay, I need to get away from this. And so all of the attention goes to getting away from it. We lose sight of where it is we want to go, because we're reacting so strongly to whatever this external force is. Now, sometimes that might be exactly the right thing to do. It's like, actually, we do need to put all our effort into pushing back against it or to getting away from it. But if we develop a habit of this, what can then happen is one thing happens and our attention goes completely on that, and then something else, and then we're dealing with this, and then something else, and we just get stuck reacting, rather than actually proactively moving towards what it is that we really want. And this can take us right off course and put us into a bad situation. So what's the solution? What do we do instead of being too reactive? Well, one possibility that is sometimes, on a superficial level, it's quite appealing, is to become non-reactive. Okay? Now, again, just like being really reactive sometimes is going to be a healthy thing to do, being non-reactive, sometimes that will be a healthy thing to do. But what we choose to do instead is, okay, we're steering towards where we want to go, something comes in, we just pretty much pretend like it's not there and just like, oh, I'm going to keep going as if that, that's not even happening, right? No response, yeah? And in some situations that can be great. There are some things that happen around us that if we just don't react to them, they tend to dissipate. Perfect, it can be a perfect response. But other times, if we don't react to it, well, it can harm us, right? Or it can really push us off course and cause us problems. And it's like, In addition to this, even if it doesn't do us any great harm, it can make it much less efficient in terms of steering ourselves to where we want to go. And in a level, it makes us less alive. To be alive means that we do, this is where we come to the third option, respond. We do actually respond to the things around us. We don't just act like they're not there. We respond in various ways. And people can often think, okay, so reactive, I don't want to be reactive, so therefore unreactive, that's the opposite. I'll do that. That must be what I should do. But they can take that too far, and they can start to not recognize the effect that things are happening on them, maybe not allow themselves to have and express emotions about what's going on around them, not allow themselves to factor in extra effort, extra rest, extra whatever it is that they need to be able to deal with the different things around them. And that, that's not healthy. That's not getting the most out of life. So what's the third option? I've already mentioned it. We can think of this as, the famous third way, the middle way, the way that has a balance between these opposites of being reactive and unreactive, and that is to be responsive. So to be responsive means that we do acknowledge, we do recognize the effect of different things and how they might be affecting us. But then there's an element of choosing what we do about that. Rather than just going like, oh, I need to react, I have to get away from it, or I have to react against it. Rather than doing nothing, I'll pretend it's not there. Choosing what we do. And sometimes the best response might be to, put all our effort into dealing with it, towards it or getting away from it. Sometimes just not responding to it, reacting to it, that might be the best thing. But many times, the best, most healthy way for us to deal with these things is going to be to respond to it in something where there's a balance, where it's like, okay, I need to deal with this. Maybe I need to put some effort into it, but not everything, so then I'm still thinking about where it is I want to go. What's the best way, not just to deal with this, but to get where I want to be able to deal with it and then course correct and then go back to where I need to go. Or maybe to get away, but then find a way to come back into what I need to do. And so that becomes, ultimately the healthy way for us to find a balance. Yeah, sometimes we're going to have to put all our effort into reacting to things around us. Other times, just not reacting is going to work really well. But other times we can respond and we can go, actually, yes, I'm going to factor this in. I'm going to, because it can be all sorts of different things. I'm going to recognize that this is happening. I need to put a little bit more time and effort into this. I need to factor a little bit more rest into my day because I've been working hard on something. I need to, change my plans for the activities I'm going to do because the weather isn't suitable. To respond rather than just completely not react, be unreactive, but also not lose sight of where it is that we're wanting to go, what it is that we're wanting to achieve. And this way we can not get caught up too much by the different things that happen around us, but continue on to achieve the things that we want and have the best results in life. Okay, so how does this tie in with Qigong practice? Well, Qigong, I think, is a really good tool that naturally helps us to develop this responsiveness. Within Qigong practice, we're often working with quite subtle things. Here we're tuning in to how different things are affecting each other, both inside our body, inside our energy system, and also in connection with our environment around us. And so we start to notice these little details. As part of this, a lot of Qigong practices is done quite slowly. And this allows us to observe things and find a detail. And part of this nature of learning to do things slowly, learning to be very observant, very aware, is when different things do happen around us, we then tend to have a tendency to observe first before then choosing how to respond. Whereas if we haven't been doing our Qigong practice or somehow naturally developed this habit, there can be a tendency to like, oh, here's the thing, and I just have like almost a pre-programmed response or reaction against or away from whatever it is. With our Qigong practice, with the presence of mind, with the awareness, we go like, oh, there's a thing happening. What will I do about it? And then we're able to have a much more nuanced approach of like, okay, I could deal with it this way. I could deal with it this way. I could just ignore it. Or maybe I'll do this and that's what finds the right balance for me. This happens in really, really subtle ways. And for the most part, it just comes naturally out of doing your practice. You know, some of the more, I guess, obvious or sort of extreme versions where you really notice this is when things happen very quickly around you. When you've been doing a lot of slow, focused Qigong practice, it can be very much almost as if time slows down. And things will happen. They're happening very fast. But even though they're happening very fast and you need to respond to them quickly, in your own perception, it's like you actually have time to observe, consider, and then choose your response rather than just reacting in a, almost a pre-programmed or instinctive way. Anyway, hopefully there's something interesting, useful from that for you. I think it's a healthy framework to think about things. Reactive, unreactive, or responsive. Responsive can encompass all of that. It can encompass being, having strongly reacting when we need to, being unreactive when we choose to, when we feel like that is the best way that we can act, or finding a middle path, responding, reacting as much as we need to, but not overreacting. All right, I look forward to seeing you on another vlog soon.